Golden child brother ruined my life. Now he's begging for my help after losing everything and being disowned. I'm Jason, 32 male. For context, you need to know about my family dynamic. It was, to put it mildly, messed up. From day one it was clear my parents had a favorite, and spoiler alert, it wasn't me. My brother Mark, 2 years older, was the golden child. He was handsome, athletic, and charming, or at least that's how everyone saw him. I was just Jason, the quiet one, the studious one, the one who always got good grades but never got the praise. I grew up in a big house in a wealthy suburb. Sounds idyllic, right? Wrong. Inside those walls, it was like living in a twisted fairy tale where the prince got everything and the pauper got scraps. Mark could do no wrong. He'd break things, get bad grades, even get into minor trouble at school, and it was always excused, minimized, or someone else's fault. Me. I once accidentally spilled juice on the carpet when I was 5, and I got grounded for a week. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that was the level of disparity we're talking about. My parents, bless their hearts, were completely blind to it, or maybe they just didn't care. My mother, Sarah, was a homemaker, dedicated to raising her perfect family, which in her mind revolved entirely around Mark. My father, Robert, was a successful businessman, always busy, always stressed, and always eager to just agree with whatever my mother said to keep the peace. They created this echo chamber where Mark was the center of the universe, and I was just orbiting somewhere in the distant background. Growing up, I learned to be invisible. If I didn't ask for anything, didn't make any noise, didn't cause any trouble, life was marginally easier. I threw myself into my studies. Books became my escape, knowledge my weapon. While Mark was out partying, playing sports, and being the popular kid, I was in my room, reading, learning, and dreaming of a life far away from my family. I remember one Christmas, I was maybe 10, Mark got a brand new, top-of-the-line mountain bike. The kind every kid in school was drooling over. I got a set of encyclopedias. Encyclopedias. Don't get me wrong, I loved to read even then, but a 10-year-old wants a bike, not a set of books that weigh more than they do. When I tried to express my disappointment, my mother just said, "Jason, books are an investment in your future. Mark needs to be active, it's good for him." It was always like that, justifications and excuses for Mark, and practical, often joyless things for me. High school was more of the same. Mark was the star quarterback, dating the head cheerleader, and getting into all the cool parties. I was the nerdy kid in AP classes, president of the debate club, and editor of the school newspaper. We lived in the same house, went to the same school, but our worlds were galaxies apart. My parents went to all of Mark's games, cheered him on, and plastered his trophies all over the living room. My academic achievements. A polite nod at the dinner table, if they remembered to mention them at all. When college application time came around, Mark decided he wanted to go to State University, known more for its party scene than its academics. My parents were thrilled. It was close to home, they could visit easily, and it was a big-name school, even if it wasn't academically prestigious. I, on the other hand, had my sights set on a top university across the country. It was my dream school, the best in my field, and I knew it was my ticket out of my suffocating family dynamic. When I told my parents about my acceptance and scholarship offer, their reaction was underwhelming. My mother worried about me being so far away, and my father fretted about the cost, even though my scholarship covered almost everything. Mark, of course, chimed in with some condescending remark about me becoming a bookworm recluse. It was like they couldn't see my achievement for what it was, a huge accomplishment, a dream come true. They were so focused on Mark's path, his choices, his life, that mine was just an afterthought. Despite their lukewarm reaction, I went. I packed my bags, said my goodbyes, and left. It was the best decision I ever made. College was a revelation. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who appreciated my intelligence, my drive, and my passions. I thrived academically, made real friends, and started to come into my own. I still called home occasionally, mostly out of obligation, but the conversations were always stilted, focused on Mark's latest exploits or my mother's complaints about the weather. My father would usually just grunt in agreement with whatever she said. During college, I worked part-time jobs, saved every penny, and even started freelancing in my field of study. I was determined to be financially independent, to never have to rely on my parents for anything. While Mark was racking up credit card debt and partying his way through college, I was building my future brick by brick. It was hard work, but it was incredibly rewarding. I was proving to myself and maybe subconsciously to my parents that I was capable, successful, and worthy, even without their validation. After graduation, I landed a great job in a tech company. It was exactly what I wanted: challenging, exciting, and well-paying. I moved to a new city, further away from my family, and started building my life. I made new friends, explored new hobbies, and finally felt like I was living my own story, not just a supporting character in Mark's. Meanwhile, Mark's life wasn't going quite as planned. He graduated college with a mediocre degree, drifted through a series of unfulfilling jobs, and eventually ended up back home, living in the basement. My parents, ever the enablers, continued to support him financially, making excuses for his lack of direction and blaming the economy, the job market, anything but Mark himself. I visited home maybe once or twice a year for major holidays, mostly to keep the peace. Each visit was a stark reminder of why I left. Mark was still the golden child, albeit a slightly tarnished one. He was unemployed, directionless, and increasingly resentful of my success. My parents, while outwardly proud of me, still couldn't quite grasp the reality of my life. They seemed to think of my success as some kind of fluke, while Mark's failures were just temporary setbacks. One Thanksgiving, things came to a head. I had just received a significant promotion at work, and I was excited to share the news. I told my parents and Mark at dinner, expecting at least some acknowledgement. My mother offered a perfunctory congratulations, while my father just nodded absent-mindedly. Mark, however, scoffed. Mark said, "Oh, another promotion. Must be nice to have it so easy." I replied, "Easy. Mark, I've worked my butt off for this, you know that." Mark said, Yeah, working hard. Must be coding all day in your little cubicle, real tough life." He was dripping with sarcasm. I tried to keep my cool. "It's actually a pretty demanding job, but I enjoy it." Mark said, "Enjoy it. Or just enjoy being Mr. Successful Son now that I'm the family disappointment." That comment stung, not because it was true, but because it highlighted the toxic dynamic that still existed in our family. Even though I had moved on and built a successful life, Mark and my parents were still trapped in this old narrative of golden child versus forgotten son. I said, "Mark, nobody is calling you a disappointment except maybe yourself. And for the record, I'm not trying to compete with you. I'm just living my life." Mark said, "Sure, rub it in, why don't you? Mr. Big Shot Tech Guy." He stood up from the table, his face red with anger. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" I stood up too, trying to defuse the situation. "Mark, that's not what I think at all. I just wish you could be happy for me just once." Mark just glared at me, then stormed out of the room. My parents watched the whole thing, saying nothing, doing nothing. It was like they were afraid to upset Mark, even when he was being completely unreasonable. That was the last straw for me. I finished dinner in silence, said a polite goodbye, and left. I decided then and there that I was done trying to have a normal relationship with my family. It was too toxic, too draining, and frankly, too pointless. I went low contact, only calling on holidays, keeping conversations brief and superficial, and avoiding visits whenever possible. Life went on. I continued to climb the corporate ladder, eventually starting my own tech company. It was a huge risk, but it paid off. Within a few years, my company was thriving. I was financially secure, successful beyond my wildest dreams, and finally, truly happy. I had built a life for myself, completely independent of my family, and it was everything I ever wanted. Then out of the blue, about a year ago, I got a phone call from my mother. I hadn't spoken to her in months, maybe even close to a year. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. My mother's voice was shaky, almost tearful. "Jason, it's your mother. I need to talk to you." My first thought was that something had happened to my father. "Mom, what's wrong? Is Dad okay?" My mother said, "Your father is fine, but it's Mark." Her voice cracked. "Mark is in trouble, Jason. Big trouble." I braced myself. Mark had always been a train wreck waiting to happen. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. My mother hesitated for a moment, then blurted out, He lost everything, Jason. Everything." I was confused. "Lost everything? What do you mean?" My mother explained, in a rush of words, that Mark had gotten involved in some shady investments, listened to some get-rich-quick scheme, and basically gambled away all the money my parents had given him over the years. Not just his own savings, but money they had lent him, money they had given him, everything. It was a substantial amount, more than I even realized they had given him. Apparently, they had been secretly funding his lifestyle for years, hoping he would eventually get his act together. Instead, he had just dug himself deeper and deeper into a hole, and it wasn't just financial. My mother went on to explain that Mark had alienated all his friends, burned bridges with former employers, and was now completely isolated and desperate. He was living in a cheap apartment, barely scraping by, and drowning in debt. My parents had finally cut him off financially, realizing they were enabling him, not helping him. But it was too late. Mark was facing eviction, creditors were calling, and he was completely lost. My mother said he needs help, Jason, and we don't know what to do. We've tried everything, but he won't listen to us. He just keeps blaming us, blaming everyone but himself. She started to sob. Please, Jason, can you talk to him? Can you help him? I was silent for a long moment, processing everything she had just told me. Part of me felt a flicker of something. Not exactly sympathy, maybe more like a detached curiosity. Mark, the golden child, the one who had everything handed to him, was now completely broken. It was almost karmic. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being a kid, being Mark's brother, felt a different kind of pull. Despite everything, despite the years of favoritism and neglect, he was still my brother. And my mother, despite her flaws, was still my mother. And she was clearly desperate. I took a deep breath. Okay, Mom, I said finally. I'll talk to him. My mother's relief was palpable. Oh, Jason, thank you so much. He's staying at a motel downtown. I can give you the address. I got the address, hung up the phone, and sat there for a while just thinking. What was I going to say to Mark? What could I even do? He had always been so arrogant, so dismissive of me. Would he even listen to me now? And did I even want to help him? After everything he had put me through, after all the years of being second best, did I owe him anything? I thought about it for a long time, wrestling with my emotions, my memories, and my sense of obligation or lack thereof. Finally, I made a decision. I would talk to Mark. Not because I felt obligated, not because I wanted to rescue him, but because I wanted to see what had become of him. I wanted to see the golden child brought down to earth. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see if there was still a brother in there somewhere, buried beneath layers of entitlement and resentment. I drove to the motel the next day. It was a rundown place in a seedy part of town, the kind of place you only see in movies about people hitting rock bottom. I parked my car, took a deep breath, and walked inside. The lobby was dingy and smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and despair. I asked the clerk for Mark's room number, and he pointed me down a long, dimly lit hallway. I found the room, knocked on the door, and waited. After a moment the door creaked open, and there he was, Mark. But not the Mark I remembered. This Mark was gaunt, unshaven, and his eyes were bloodshot and hollow. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He was wearing a stained t-shirt and sweatpants, and his hair was a mess. He looked pathetic. He stared at me for a moment, his expression a mixture of surprise and resentment. Jason, what are you doing here? His voice was raspy, weak. I replied, Mom called me. She said you needed help. Mark scoffed. Help from you? Right, like you can help me. He stepped back as if to close the door. I put my hand on the doorframe, stopping him. Mark, just can we talk, please? He hesitated for a moment, then sighed and stepped aside, letting me in. The room was even worse than the lobby. It was small, cramped, and smelled of mildew and unwashed laundry. Clothes were strewn everywhere, empty food containers littered the nightstand, and the bed was unmade. It was a picture of utter chaos and neglect. And Mark was sitting in the middle of it all, looking completely defeated. I sat down on the edge of the bed, carefully avoiding a pile of dirty clothes. Mark remained standing, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, staring at the floor. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, I said, So, Mom said you lost everything. Mark didn't look up. Yeah, well, Mom always exaggerates, but his voice lacked conviction. I said, Did you? He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and shame. Okay, fine, yeah, I screwed up. Big time. Happy now? I replied, happy. No, Mark, I'm not happy. I'm concerned. What happened? He finally started to talk, the words tumbling out in a rush of bitterness and self-pity. He told me about the investments, the promises of quick riches, the mounting losses, and the spiral of desperation. He talked about how he had lied to my parents, borrowed more money, and kept chasing losses, hoping to recoup everything. And how it had all come crashing down, leaving him with nothing but debt and regret. As he talked, I listened. I didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't offer advice. I just listened. And as I listened, I started to see something beyond the arrogance and resentment, something I hadn't seen in years. I saw vulnerability, pain, and a deep, underlying sense of shame. Mark, the golden child, was finally facing the consequences of his choices, and he was completely broken by it. When he finally finished talking, he looked at me, his eyes pleading. So, can you help me? Mom said you might be able to. Can you lend me some money? Just enough to get back on my feet, pay off some of these debts, maybe get a new place to live. There it was, the moment of truth, the golden child stripped of everything, begging the forgotten son for help. Part of me wanted to say no, to walk out and leave him to wallow in his misery. He deserved it, didn't he? After all those years of being treated like I was nothing, didn't he finally deserve to feel what it was like to be at the bottom? But another part of me, that nagging sense of brotherly connection, wouldn't let me do it. I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and I saw not just my arrogant, entitled brother, but a broken, desperate human being. And in that moment, I realized that revenge wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted, what I had always wanted, was to be seen, to be valued, to be acknowledged. And maybe, just maybe, helping Mark could be a way to finally achieve that, not just for myself, but for both of us. I took a deep breath. Mark, I said, I'm not going to lend you money. His face fell. What? But Mom said. I held up my hand. Let me finish. I'm not going to lend you money, but I will help you, but not in the way you expect. I'm not going to bail you out. I'm not going to write you a check and make all your problems go away, because that's not what you need. What you need is to learn to help yourself. Mark stared at me, confused. What are you talking about? I said, I'm talking about a job. I'm talking about a chance to start over, to rebuild your life, but this time to do it right. I have a company, Mark, a successful company, and we're always looking for good people. I can offer you a job. Not a high-level position, not a handout, but a real job with real responsibilities and a real chance to prove yourself. Mark was silent for a long moment, processing what I had just said. Then slowly a flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. A job with you, doing what? I said, I run a tech company, remember. We need people in sales, marketing, customer support, all kinds of roles. I'm sure we can find something that fits your skills or lack thereof. But here's the deal, Mark. This won't be easy. You'll have to work hard, you'll have to prove yourself, and you'll have to earn your way just like everyone else. No special treatment, no golden child privileges. Can you handle that? Mark looked at me, his expression still wary but also intrigued. I don't know, I haven't done anything like that before. I replied, then it's time to learn. Look, Mark, you're at rock bottom. You have nothing to lose. Either you can keep wallowing in self-pity and blaming everyone else, or you can take this chance and try to turn things around. The choice is yours. He was silent for another long moment, then finally he nodded. Okay, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Okay, I'll do it. I'll take the job. And that's how it started. I hired Mark. I got him out of that motel, found him a small, modest apartment, and put him to work at my company. It wasn't easy for either of us. Mark had to adjust to a completely different world, a world where he wasn't the center of attention, where he had to work for everything he got, and where his past mistakes weren't going to be magically erased. He made mistakes, a lot of them. He struggled, he stumbled, and he almost gave up more than once. But I didn't give up on him. I was tough on him, demanding and sometimes even harsh. But I was also fair, supportive, and always there to offer guidance and encouragement when he needed it. Slowly, gradually, Mark started to change. He started to take responsibility for his actions, to learn from his mistakes, and to develop a work ethic he never had before. He started to earn the respect of his colleagues, not because he was my brother, but because he was actually good at his job. And for the first time in his life, he started to feel a sense of real accomplishment, of genuine self-worth. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Mark still had a long way to go. He was still dealing with the fallout of his past mistakes, still paying off debts, still rebuilding his life from scratch. But he was working at it day by day, step by step. And he was doing it on his own, without handouts, without excuses, and without the golden child safety net he had relied on for so long. And me. Well, I got something I never expected. Not just the satisfaction of seeing Mark turn his life around, but something deeper, something more profound. I got my brother back. Not the golden child, not the arrogant bully, but a real brother, someone I could actually connect with, someone I could actually respect. And in helping him, I finally healed some of the wounds of my own childhood, the wounds of being the forgotten son. It wasn't revenge, it was something much better. It was redemption for both of us. Help me out here, Reddit. Am I the asshole for initially wanting revenge? And did I do the right thing by helping Mark, even after everything? I'm bracing myself for the comments, but I really need your perspective. Update 1. Wow, I'm honestly shocked at how many people responded to my original post. I really just needed to get that story off my chest, and I didn't expect so much feedback. Thank you all for your comments, your support, and your different perspectives. It's been really helpful to read through them and see how others see my situation. A lot of you are asking for updates on Mark, so here's what's been happening. It's been about 6 months since I hired him, and honestly, it's been a roller coaster. There have been ups and downs, moments of progress and moments of setbacks, but overall, I think he's moving in the right direction. He's still working at my company in a customer support role. It's not glamorous, but he's actually really good at it. Turns out, he's got great people skills when he's not being arrogant and entitled. He's gotten positive feedback from customers, and his team lead says he's a valuable member of the team. That's a huge change from the directionless, unemployed Mark of a year ago. He's also been going to therapy, which I gently suggested when he first started working for me. I think it's been really helpful for him to unpack some of his issues, understand his patterns of behavior, and learn healthier coping mechanisms. He doesn't talk about it much, but I can see a difference in his demeanor, his attitude, and his overall outlook on life. Financially, he's still digging himself out of debt, but he's making progress. He's living within his means, budgeting carefully, and slowly but surely paying off his creditors. It's going to take time, but he's committed to it. And for the first time, he's earning his own money, paying his own bills, and feeling a sense of financial independence. Our relationship as brothers is evolving. It's not perfect, and we still have a lot of baggage to unpack. But we're talking more, communicating more openly, and starting to build a relationship based on mutual respect, rather than resentment and rivalry. We even had dinner at my place last week, just the two of us, and it was actually nice. No yelling, no sarcasm, just two brothers having a normal conversation. It was a small thing, but it felt like a huge step forward. My parents are complicated. They're happy that Mark is doing better, and they're grateful to me for helping him. But they still struggle to understand the dynamics of our family, and they still tend to minimize their role in creating the golden child forgotten son dynamic. They're getting older, and I think they're less willing or able to confront their own flaws and mistakes. I've accepted that they may never fully understand, and I'm focusing on building a healthier relationship with Mark, rather than trying to change my parents. Some of you asked if I felt like I got revenge. Honestly, no. Helping Mark wasn't about revenge. It was about breaking a cycle, about healing old wounds, and about giving both of us a chance to move forward. And in a strange way, it was also about finally getting my parents' attention, not by being successful or accomplished, but by being the one who stepped up and helped their golden child when he was at his lowest point. It's ironic, isn't it? The forgotten son becomes the savior. Anyway, thank you again for all your comments and support. It means a lot to know that there are people out there who understand, or at least try to understand, what I've been through. I'll keep you updated as things progress. Update 2. Another update, since so many of you are still following this story. Things with Mark continue to improve, although it's definitely not a straight line upward. There are still bumps in the road, but overall, he's making solid progress. At work, he recently got promoted to a senior customer support role. His manager specifically mentioned his improved performance, his positive attitude, and his ability to handle difficult clients. He even got a small raise, which was a big deal for him, both financially and emotionally. He was so proud when he told me. It was really heartwarming to see. He's actually starting to build a career for himself, something he never seemed capable of before. His therapy is also ongoing, and I think it's making a real difference. He's become much more self-aware, more emotionally intelligent, and better able to manage his impulses and emotions. He's still got his moments, of course, but they're fewer and further between, and he's much better at recognizing when he's slipping back into old patterns. Financially, he's making steady progress on his debt. He's actually on track to pay off a significant portion of it by the end of the year, which is a huge accomplishment. He's even started to save a little bit of money for the first time in his adult life. He talks about maybe taking a vacation next year, something he hasn't done in years. It's amazing to see him thinking about the future, making plans, and having hope again. Our brotherly relationship is also continuing to grow. We're spending more time together, doing normal brotherly things, like going to movies, grabbing dinner, even just hanging out and watching sports. It's still a bit awkward sometimes, especially when we talk about the past, but we're both making an effort to be open, honest, and forgiving. We even had a conversation about our childhood recently, and he actually apologized for some of the things he did and said to me growing up. It wasn't a dramatic, tearful apology, but it was sincere, and it meant a lot to me. My parents, well, they're still my parents. They're happy that Mark is doing well, and they're starting to see a different side of him, a more responsible, mature side. They've even started to treat him differently, with more respect and less coddling. It's like they're finally realizing that he's not the golden child anymore, and that's actually a good thing. They're also starting to acknowledge, in small ways, the favoritism of the past, although they still have a long way to go. Baby steps, I guess. One funny thing happened recently. Mark actually started giving me advice. About my business, about my personal life, about things I was struggling with. And you know what? His advice was actually pretty good. It was so weird and kind of funny to have my younger brother, the former golden child, screw up, giving me advice. But it was also a sign of how much he's changed, how much he's grown, and how much our relationship has shifted. I'm still getting messages and comments from many of you, asking for updates and sharing your own stories. It's really amazing to see how many people have resonated with my story, and how many of you have been through similar experiences. It makes me feel less alone, and more hopeful about the possibility of healing and forgiveness, even in the most messed up family dynamics. Thank you all for being such a supportive community. I'll keep you updated as things continue to unfold. Update 3. Okay, Reddit, final update for now. Although I suspect this story will continue to unfold in unexpected ways for years to come. But for now, here's where things stand. Mark is thriving. I know it sounds almost unbelievable, given where he was just a year and a half ago. But it's true. He's killing it at work, he's completely debt-free, he's got a healthy savings account, and he's even started dating someone new. A really nice woman who seems to genuinely like him for who he is now, not for who he used to be or who our parents wanted him to be. He got another promotion at work, just a few weeks ago. He's now managing a small team of customer support reps, and he's doing an amazing job. He's a natural leader, it turns out, when he's not being driven by ego and entitlement. He's supportive, encouraging, and genuinely invested in his team's success. His colleagues respect him, his bosses trust him, and he's finally found a career path that he's passionate about and good at. His therapy is still ongoing, but he's reached a point where he's more focused on personal growth and self-improvement, rather than just crisis management. He's learned so much about himself, about his patterns of behavior, and about how to build healthy relationships. He's become a much more emotionally mature, self-aware, and well-rounded person. Our relationship as brothers is incredible. We're genuinely close now, closer than we've ever been in our lives. We talk regularly, we hang out often, and we actually enjoy each other's company. We've even started a new tradition of going on a brother's trip once a year. Last year we went hiking in the mountains, and this year we're planning a beach vacation. It's surreal, honestly, to think that just a few years ago, we could barely stand to be in the same room together, and now we're planning vacations together. My parents, well, they've also changed in their own way. They're not perfect, and they still have their blind spots, but they've made an effort to be more equitable, more supportive, and less focused on the golden child narrative. They've actually started to treat me and Mark more equally, and to appreciate both of us for our individual strengths and accomplishments. It's taken a long time, and a lot of work, but we're finally starting to function like a normal, relatively healthy family. The biggest change, though, is in Mark himself. He's no longer the arrogant, entitled golden child. He's become a humble, hardworking, and genuinely good person. He's learned from his mistakes, he's taken responsibility for his actions, and he's rebuilt his life from the ground up. And in doing so, he's not only saved himself, but he's also saved our relationship, and maybe even our family. Looking back on everything, I realized that my initial desire for revenge was understandable, but ultimately misguided. Revenge wouldn't have healed anything. It wouldn't have made me feel better, and it certainly wouldn't have helped Mark. What healed us, what transformed our relationship and our family, was forgiveness, compassion, and a willingness to give each other a second chance. The biggest lesson I've learned from all of this is that people can change. Even people who seem completely lost, completely broken, completely beyond redemption. And sometimes, the greatest act of revenge is not to inflict pain, but to offer help, to extend a hand, and to give someone the opportunity to become a better version of themselves. It's not always easy and it doesn't always work, but when it does, it's more rewarding than any revenge could ever be. So, Reddit, that's my story. Thank you for listening, for your support, and for your perspectives. It's been a wild ride, but I'm grateful for where it's led us. And I'm hopeful for what the future holds for me, for Mark, and for our family. Maybe the forgotten son finally found his place in the sun, not by outshining the golden child, but by helping him find his own way out of the darkness. And maybe, just maybe, that's a kind of success that's even more meaningful than I ever imagined. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.